Hello, BookTube. I'm continuing my slow word-by-word, sentence-by-sentence crawl through The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. We won't block the very sleepy baby. And we have finished with the book. We are reading the appendices now. The Lord of the Rings has 100 tight-back pages of appendices in the back, and we are at Appendix B, which is the Tale of Kings. This is a brief appendix that is manna from heaven. It is just a dream come true to fanatics of this book, to fanatical fans of this book. I am one myself. I remember when, in the 70s, when you couldn't get enough of detailed breakdowns of every little bit and piece in this book. It was in the 70s that I first noticed people putting forward, for instance, all kinds of outlandish theories about who or what Tom Bombadil is. It's still a favorite thing to do. This appendix has very little in the way of prose. It's mostly lists, including the be-all and end-all for Tolkien fans, a chronological list dated year and month and sometimes even day of all the events that happened in the Third Age. So no longer a matter of guessing. When was Elrond's daughter Arwen born? When was Aragorn born? When was Aragorn's mother born? When did Gandalf go to Dol Guldur for the first time to spy out whether or not the necromancer might be more than he seems? When did the Battle of Five Armies take place? All that sort of thing. It's not roughly, it's exactly when. It's a chronology, a broken down chronology of the events in Lord of the Rings, but also a lot of the events preceding it, all the way back to mythological times. To Middle Earth mythological times. That section is fascinating for fans. It isn't a reading experience, and it doesn't have anything like the narrative bits and pieces that I mentioned that we saw in Appendix A. Appendix A has some narrative bits to it. This is much more along the lines of what I was mentioning a couple of videos ago, where you have to look at this stuff and daydream. That's what this is for. This is a skeleton on which you can build Middle-earth daydreaming. One of you, in fact, a few of you mentioned, a couple of people mentioned in comments, a couple of people mentioned in emails, that one of the fun things they do in the appendices is exactly what I was talking about, where they will get to something that's very thinly sketched out, an event or a person's life or a change in a society. They will get to something that's very thinly sketched out, essentially mentioned in an analytic way, and they will imagine, what could that be like? Wouldn't it be great if Tolkien had written a 1,000-page epic of that story? Because a lot of the stories in here will. I mentioned just a couple. I mean, imagine a 1,000-page narrative, Lord of the Rings style piece about the War of the Dwarves and the Orcs, for instance, I mentioned yesterday, or the war with the Witch King of Angmar, which is defeated by an alliance of races, by an alliance of men and elves, and who knows who else might be involved, whose stories we wouldn't get, the minutiae of whose stories we wouldn't get, the heroism of it. Like anybody, I sort of daydream about Tolkien who was not so-called distracted by a professional career or by anything else, and who maybe wasn't as slow and punctilious a worker, and who maybe gave us other epics. And God bless the Tolkien estate. They are doing their best to sort of scratch that itch in a way, in whatever way they can. Tolkien wrote a lot of stuff, and you can package and repackage that. You can have people go at it critically, and you can come out with new books, 2 or 3 new books every year that will be legitimately interesting, in addition to a new edition of Lord of the Rings every year. And there's all sorts of room for more of that. All sorts of room. Oh my God. The thing that I've been mentioning in connection with the appendices for the last few videos has not ever been done. A fully annotated, a scholarly annotated variorum edition of The Lord of the Rings has never been done, where every page has half its length in footnotes of clarification of one kind or another, either drawn from the letters or sketches, unfinished tales, the appendices, anything like that, to load the text of The Lord of the Rings down with all of this stuff, and maybe even do it to the extent where you remove the appendices. That, as far as I know, has never been done. Uh, a popular edition Lord of the Rings that maybe has a smattering of notes, and there's also full of the illustrations of the Hildebrandt brothers, has, as far as I know, never been done. There are all sorts of possibilities for future Lord of the Rings editions. Uh, but for this particular appendix, there's only one thing really that fans are really going to care about. It's pretty much the only thing in this appendix that is written in prose. All the rest of it is this sort of thing. It just runs down the years and what happened in that years. There are only a few parts of this that break down into prose, and one of the parts of those is the part that Tolkien fans and nerds of all kinds have always gone back to a million times over, and that is the wizards. Who or what are the wizards, and what do we know about them? And we get an all-important and oft-quoted passage, and I might as well quote it myself. When maybe 1,000 years had passed, and the first shadow had fallen on Greenwood the Great, the Istari, or wizards, appeared in Middle-earth. It was afterwards said that they came out of the far west, and were messengers sent to contest the power of Sauron, and to unite all those who had the will to resist him. But they were forbidden to match his power with power, or to seek to dominate elves or men by force or fear. Always been a bit of confusion to me there, always. Also seems very, very Christian. It's a very Christian idea of what gods would or wouldn't do in a way of intervening. Not dominating elves and men, sure, you don't want to send over Istari, who are going to be the very problem that Sauron is, who seeks to dominate elves and men. But why that bit about not contesting with Sauron power for power? It's like I said in one of my earlier read-throughs of this book on this channel. Are the Valar in or out? Are they in or out of this struggle against Sauron? If they can send emissaries to inspire the hearts of elves and men, then why can't they send emissaries to directly contest with Sauron? Why can't they do that? But anyway, it goes on here. They came, therefore, in the shapes of men, though they were never young and aged only slowly, and they had many powers of mind and hand. They revealed their true names to few, but used such names as were given to them. The two highest of this order, of whom it is said there were 5. Notice the bits and pieces here. It is said that they were sent by the West. It is said there were only 5, which is not the kind of speech that the appendices use when they're sure. The appendices do not say it is said that King Elisar married Lady Undumiel. That is not said. That is known. But if we assume that these appendices are the appendices to an actual book written by a hobbit or a team of hobbit scribes or whatnot, wouldn't they have gotten this material directly from Elrond, who got it directly from Círdan, or wouldn't they have got it directly from Gandalf? Why would it be it is said? But it is said that they were called by the Eldar Curanur, a man of skill, and Mithrandr, the Grey Pilgrim, and by men of the north, Saruman and Gandalf. Curanur journeyed into the east, but dwelt at last in Isengard. You know nothing of what Saruman does in the east. Nothing. It's widely theorized by Tolkien fans that the 2 other wizards, the so-called Blue Wizards, also went into the east. So, but anyway, Mithrandr was closest in friendship with the Eldar, and wandered mostly in the west, and never made for himself any lasting abode. Tolkien fans love to go at that to try and figure out as much as they can about wizards. I'm always struck by those 2 qualities. One is that it seems a little tentative, when presumably the author of this appendix would have gotten any of this information. I mean, they say it is said here. Let me get the exact wording. They say, well, actually, let me. I might as well read you this whole part. Throughout the Third Age, the guardianship of the 3 rings was known only to those who possessed them. But at the end it became known that they had been held at first by the 3 greatest of the Eldar, Gil-galad, Galadriel, and Círdan. Gil-galad, before he died, gave his ring to Elrond. Círdan later surrendered to his to Mithrandr, for Círdan saw further and deeper than any other in Middle-earth, and he welcomed Mithrandr at the Grey Havens, knowing whence he came and whither he would return. So that part's not it is said. Take this ring, master, he said, for your labors will be heavy, but it will support you in the weariness that you've taken upon yourself. For this is the ring of fire, and with it you may rekindle hearts in a world that grows chill. But as for me, my heart is with the sea, and I will dwell by the gray shores until the last ship sails. I will await you. And of course, at the end of the Lord of the Rings, we see Gandalf take ship for the West. I've heard Tolkien theorists online. I love watching their channels. Absolutely love it. Quite a few of them for years have said that the fact that Gandalf secretly wields the Ring of Fire accounts for his frequent mastery of fire in the Lord of the Rings, his frequent association with fire in the Lord of the Rings. I'm not so sure of that myself, but I mean, if we say that is because of the ring, where do we get to what powers of mind and hand Gandalf actually has himself? Plus, there's a moment in the Fellowship where he ignites a great fire. There was no other way to do it. The wood is completely soaked. They are being drenched in snow and sleet. And he makes a comment that if anyone is around with eyes to see, I have just set up basically a billboard saying, "Here is Gandalf." If that was associated with the ring instead of with Gandalf, I don't know why that would be true. But we'll get to that when we get to the Fellowship of the Ring. But anyway, that is one element that's always struck me here, not only here, but in all the appendices, is what does the writer of the appendix actually know and what don't they know? Where are they getting this information? Are they getting the stories about the dwarves in later days from Gimli? Are they getting information about the woodland realm from Legolas? Are they getting all sorts of information about Gondor in the Fourth Age from Aragorn himself, from King Elisar, who often comes to the borders of the Shire and invites all his friends to come and visit him there and go traveling with him? I think that's fascinating. It's meta on top of meta. We're supposed to assume that a lot of this, the quasi-historical and mythological material in these appendices, is the foregrounding for a lot of the stuff in the Lord of the Rings. But what is the foregrounding for the appendices? It's that element always intrigues me. I actually love that. I am one of those Tolkien fans who loves simply playing around in the appendices, just seeing what's in there and what you can piece together and figure out and daydream about. And the other question that always comes up in this part, the part about the wizards, is the one that I've voiced many times, which is why? Why are they so limited? Why are they so limited? Sauron is not limited. Why are they sent over limited? If the Valar want to help in the fight against Sauron, if they're that involved, then why aren't they more involved? It very much seems like, it very much seems like the kind of Rube Goldberg style methodology of redemption that is endemic to Christianity. That no, you sinned, but you also have original sin that you couldn't do anything about. So it's not your fault, but it is. And you can pray to get rid of it in devotion and sacrifice and offerings at the altar, but that won't work either. You have to do that, but that's also fruitless because you need a crucifixion and a redemption. And it seems a lot that way to me. It seems like if you had sat Tolkien down and asked him why the Astari don't come over in order to confront Sauron himself, even if they restrict themselves to just confronting him sorcerously. So maybe for some weird reason the Valar say, well, the men and elves of Middle-earth have to fight Sauron, the military commander, on their own with their own military strength. Maybe the Valar say that. They certainly didn't ultimately say that about Morgoth. But maybe they say that about Sauron. That still wouldn't account for the fact that the Witch King can paralyze people with fear. That's sorcerer's ability. Sauron has plenty of sorcerer's ability. I know the answer to this question. If you'd sat Tolkien down and asked him these things, he might have gone on at length. In fact, for all I know, he did windify on at length in letters about these things. But the real reason is because this makes a better story. And I appreciate it for that. These little dribbled bits and pieces that we get, I appreciate. But we'll move on to the next appendix. They're going to get harder and harder to make anything of, but we'll do our best. We'll move on next time to Appendix C and see what we make of it. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.